definition of a producer. And if you watch the Tom Dowd documentary, Tom Dowd in the Language of Music, Tom said a lot of the same stuff that Kevin always says to me about challenging and prodding and always striving for better. And I work with Tom, you know, on my first solo album, and I see a lot of the same similarities between Tom and Kevin, in the same way that Kevin's not just going to walk in the room and say, you know, to a bunch of great musicians, yeah, you're all great, let's hit record. It's like, let's see if we can be better, because you can always be better.
And it was a wonderful, fortunate beginning of Joe's recording career. And that was the first solo record that Joe made with Tom Dowd, and that was amazing.
Last night at the Apollo, which is the 4th time we sold out the Hammersmith Apollo, playing the rock material in a room that is quintessentially forever locked with great rock and roll, and you know, stuff from the 70s like Mata Hoople and White Snake and you know, all the Bowies and the Iron Maidens and Judas Priest. They all began their careers there.
Yeah, I brought Carmine in, and he's been there ever since. You know, he's a legend. He's Carmine Rojas. He played with David Bowie. He's played on so many great records. I mean, he's just a wonderful bass player.
You never stop challenging yourself. You know, you always keep looking, keep searching, which is really healthy. You know, I want to feel like I'm 16 all the time on stage. So that's me challenging or looking for stuff or looking for parts or whatever. And every now and then somebody will do something, go, oh, that's kind of cool, you know. And that's really healthy. Nobody's sitting, nobody's plotting, nobody's just sitting and just doing the gig. This bunch, we actually really throw stuff out to each other, and we laugh and smile.
Tal comes from a school of funk and I think, you know, more progressive jazz.
So, I mean, I originally come from jazz. So that's when you know, and I studied classical percussion for many years. So my background that's my background. And I love anything that has groove, you know, and I'm also very into dance music and raves and anything that's, you know, and I do a lot of that music too. So I have no rules and everything. I incorporate all of that, you know, even in Joe's show. Not that people notice, but I notice. You know, sometimes I'll do in my solo, I'll do like a rave break where I'm just gonna do a build. But, you know, to me it's like folk music from, you know, 3,000 years ago. It's the same thing. So I incorporate a lot of that. So that's where I'm coming from.
But he plays a lot of styles very well, and he's very capable. And he's the backbeat of the band.
I come from I'm like an all-around drummer, which I really love to play every style, and I play every style.
Is an amazing player. He's like, really, he's a super talented player. He's very gifted, and he takes direction very well, and he's just batshit crazy enough to be able to do anything, you know. The other day we suggested he climb on top of his organ during the solo, and so he climbed on top of the organ. And it was fantastic. I mean, no one was expecting it. It was brilliant. He's like the mad professor. He's got all these tools up there, and it's like some kind of, you know, you expect some kind of Frankenstein to come out of his speakers, which it does. You know, it's like, oh, where the hell did that come from? You know, put that black thing back in its box. Dark and ominous creature, be gone.
Tell me about your working class hillbilly. Tell me about your keys. I was born in Mississippi around 1923.
I struggled internally last night. I think just the overall magnitude of the situation kind of hit me all at once, and I was a little timid or a little shy to, you know, I didn't feel totally in control of the instrument, which I like to feel like I'm totally, the instrument doesn't control me, I control it. But again, it's a big stage and it's 5,000 people, but songs like Slow Gin stood out for me last night. I thought that was really happening. I thought Dislocated Boy came out really good, Driving Towards the Daylight. And I thought our opener, Cradle Rock, was cool. It was a nice pocket, and then Dust Bowl was cool as well.
24 hours, baby. Baby, sometimes seem to slip in the day.
Doug Henthorn, you know, I've known Doug since 2005, and he probably wouldn't like me telling the story, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Doug comes into the picture because when we did the You and Me album, I was trying to find material for Joe that was bluesy and somehow exploring into the rock genre as well, and a little bit more away from the traditional blues that he'd been playing. And so we, you know, we undertook to cover this Led Zeppelin song, T for One, on that album, and it's a very challenging song.
When Kevin suggested we do T for One, I listened to it. I said, I said, it's a great blues song.
The nature of how much playing is involved made it difficult to sing and play at the same time.
But who's going to sing it? Certainly not me.
And so I suggested, you know, when I suggested the song initially, he said, I really don't think I can sing it. I said, we'll get someone else to sing it, you know. It's like you can play guitar, we'll set up the situation. We'll do it a little differently, not quite as dark as the Led Zeppelin version, and we put an orchestral arrangement behind it.
He goes, well, I know a guy from Indiana. He can come in and guest vocal. And it was Doug Henthorn.
When Kevin called me to see if I would sing T for One, of course I was familiar with T for One, being the Zepp head that I am, but he said, yeah, I'm doing this record for this guy, Joe Bonamassa. And I had heard the name Joe Bonamassa, but I honestly was not familiar with Joe. And I mean, this is a while back. And I purposely did not listen to any Joe Bonamassa before I went out to this recording session.
So poor Doug, right? We're in there. It's the first time I'm meeting Jason Bonham. It's the first time I'm meeting Carmine Rojas. It's the first time I'm meeting Rick Mellick. And we got 9 days to make a studio record. Kevin had never made a studio record in 9 days, or maybe he had, but not a practice that he likes to do, especially at that point. This was like old hat to me, because I thought 9 days was a luxury. Because the previous two, I think we took 9 days, you know, because of budgetary constraints. You know, you run out of money, you run out of songs, that's it, done.
Because I didn't want to get any kind of preconceived notion about what he is, or what this record's going to be, or what my thing should be singing this song. And so it was hard not to. Like, I need to at least hear what he does. But and I'd never told Kevin or Joe that, but hopefully he wouldn't be offended. But it was kind of a thing where I wanted to have the right headspace when I got out there, and I think to do that, I needed to have no preconceived notion of what was going to happen.
So poor Doug gets right in, straight off the plane. He comes in, he goes, "Hey everybody, I'm Doug Henthorne, nice." And Kevin goes, "We're already late. We're doing T for One right now."
When Doug came to the studio for the first time, I know he's got a very natural voice. He thinks he's been fooling people, and that he doesn't. But so he's got this insecurity, and he came to the studio to sing this, and it has to be it's a dark and deeply personal, like a vocal delivery you need.
So we do one take, and he gets on the comm, and he goes, "Doug, it's gotta be looser than that."
And he was kind of nervous, and he was standing in the room singing, and it all sounded like it was coming from up here, and I needed him to open up and drop his voice.
There was a time that I stood tall in the eyes of the man, but by my own choice I left you alone, and now I can't get you back again.
He wanted to get more of the sleepy, kind of heroin-tinged performance, because that tune is so much that way. The Zeppelin version is very just awesome, in a very sticky, heroin-induced kind of vibe.
Get him a bottle of tequila and have him lay on the ground and sing the song like that.
Which is like, what?
Now this is like, I think 11:30 in the morning. Okay, this is not drinking hours, at least for some.
Oh, fuck it. Yeah, and so, like, I did. I'm like, all right, I'll do it.
So I think he takes like a shot of tequila. He literally's laying on the ground in the vocal booth singing a song, T for One, which is an extremely difficult song,
So he had me lie on my back to try and get that performance, and we did. I know we did a number of passes where I sang it on my back.
And sing with his neck up like this. I put the microphone above his head, and I had him sing it like that. So that's how he sang the song.
And I think he just nails it.
Maybe a shot of tequila would have worked just as well, but it's too early in the day.
It's really important for him to be a part of this, because he's a big part of the whole, big picture of my career, and one of my favorite singers, out there. And I think more people should know the name Doug Henthorne, because he really is a very undiscovered gem from America's heartland of Indiana, who can sing wonderfully at 11:30 a.m., which is hard enough to begin with as a singer, with a shot of tequila on his back in a vocal booth singing a Led Zeppelin song. So there you go, Doug. Put that on your credit reel, your resume. Why do I need a label to tell me what to do? Why do I need a label to pick my songs? Why do I need a label to give me, for better or worse terms, Shylock rates on royalty? and ultimately drop me at the end of the day because I don't sell 1.5 million copies in the first 2 weeks, and they don't hear a single. You mean to tell me if that's the only way to do it? Because that was the belief. No single, no, you got to know the right people, you got to know the right answers, you got to wear the right shoes and have the right stylist, and all that was predicated, and that entire house was built on a foundation made of toothpicks.
Sony had started to have financial problems, and all of a sudden they became less attracted in the blues genre of music. You know, what a surprise. And so Joe and I decided at that point that we were going to become a big fish in a little pond and embrace the blues, unlike the major labels would ever do, because it never has enough appeal to them. So we decided that we'd embrace the blues. We'd start to make his own records on our own company, J&R Ventures, and that we felt that would be the best way to go, because at this point, up until then, we had seen through Bloodline and through Joe's own personal experience at a record company that the record companies are not stable.
And Roy figured that out before anybody. And when they write the book about him, because they always say when they write the book about him, they'll say that he was fearless enough to take him on and he beat him.
And we, Joe and I, were committed to doing this for a career forever. And we had made that promise to one another many years ago. This is what we want to do. It's not about the money. It's about doing what we want to do. And that's what J&R Adventures is all about, which is a beautiful thing. Because from that point forward, Joe has made records the way he wants to make records. It's a very unusual recording process, unlike the typical process with a record label in the record business, where you have A&R executives, you have a producer, you have an artist, and you got a lot of people in the kitchen making a record up beyond the artist and the producer. At J&R Ventures, it's just Joe and Kevin making a record. I never hear the music until it's done, nor am I interested in hearing it until it's done, because at J&R Ventures, it's about making a record that fits Joe, that's about Joe. It's not about radio, and it's not about commerciality. It's about making a great record. So much so that we never even think of radio. We don't even work radio at J&R Ventures. We let the fans tell us what they like, and that's our audience. And with that, Joe's records are eclectic, because they're not geared to one genre, and nor do they have to be. So he and Kevin get to go in there. They get to make a great record. No one's saying, well, I don't hear a hit. We wouldn't want to know what to do with a hit if we made a hit to begin with. So it's cool. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting culture of how Joe's been able to grow up and become a recording artist in his own world with Kevin Shirley, and the two of them truly get to create without any intrusions from the record industry. And it's a wonderful thing.
His greatest work is what he's done with the promoters and turning the game around, where we used to have an agent and we used to wait for promoters to offer us to give us an offer to play a show. And we'd chase offers like it was dartboard routing. Going, you're in Boise, Idaho today. Next day you're in Chicago, and you'd be on the bus and you'd be living on the bus because it's another 12 or 13-hour drive to the next city. Roy said, "What happens if I promote my own shows?"
5, 6 years ago, Joe was playing the clubs, and I wanted to get him out of the clubs and into a more prestigious venue, because I believe that the venue you play also says a lot about the kind of star that you are. And I was not able to get the concert promoters in the industry around the world to want to put Joe into these theaters, because the theaters are very expensive to rent. And by the time you rent them, you pay advertising and pay the artist, it's a big overhead against the amount of tickets you have to sell to necessarily break even. And at that time, it was too much risk for them to want to think that Joe could play one of these top venues. So in order to be able to make that paradigm shift, and I believed in, like, it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy of, like, either we play those venues and then you become a bigger star and you become a bigger talent, or you don't and then you never become a bigger star or a bigger talent. So we had to make that shift happen. So I decided I was going to rent these theaters through J&R Ventures, and that Joe and I would decide to become our own promoter. Now this is after we decided we were going to become our own record company.
I said, "Really, we're going to do that?" He goes, "It's an experiment. If we fail, we don't, everybody's getting coal in their stockings for Christmas because we're going to lose a bunch of money. But if we win, it's a proof of concept. I remember this conversation very clearly. And it started in Jacksonville, Florida, because our company's going to promote the Jacksonville show. And we're going to promote the Fort Wayne, Indiana show. And we didn't sell out the rooms, but we were able to pay the expenses of the night and make more money not selling out the place, but playing the right place than if we had taken the offer to play the club, which is where the promoters thought this music should be in.
So at that point, once we started to rent our own theaters, in America to start, we began to have success, that the people would come to the theaters. And of course we had to charge higher ticket prices, not because we wanted to make more money, but because it cost more money to rent the theater, to bring in better sound, to bring in better lights, right, to have better personnel. So everything, as you move up and up in the system, everything becomes more and more expensive. But at the same time, you have a much more professional presentation. And of course, what you see is what you believe. And in Joe's case, he's such a strong talent that if you put him into a great venue like that, you walk out thinking you had one of the greatest, theater experiences you've seen in a long time.
And there was the glass ceiling. There was the ceiling going, I see it up there, but you can't, but because you're blues, you can't go there. And Roy was the guy who said, I don't buy that.